what a pleasure it is to have these beautiful filmmakers here. So, Reagan, you've described your work as exploring the landscapes of indefinable experiences and emotions, as well as the body's relationship to nature. And I couldn't come up with a better description for the film than that. The film starts with an instruction for us, I think, as a viewer to slow down, literally. It's happening within the scene, but it feels like an invitation for us to do that, for us to be patient, which I think, and let the film envelop you, which I think is quite beautiful. It's not a film that's driven by plot or conventional structuring. Can you talk about your intentionality around that, of not trying to do doing something more elusive with an A, not with an E, and your thinking around that?
Yes, well, thank you everyone for watching and staying. Yeah, you know, I was interested in, I knew coming off of the short film I did at Poetic that I knew that I was interested in playing with form and structure in a feature-length film, and that I was interested in creating an emotional journey, one guided intentionally, but it's an emotional journey, not one driven by plot point A or plot point B, you know? And so to get to that, I ended up writing way more pages that landed in the final than what landed in the final script. We shot more than what's in the final film. But it was really, still having it be a journey where I am looking at, you know, what is the build here, what is the emotionality of the scene, what is asking me to come next or before this, but allowing it to look differently than a traditional film.
I think you succeeded with that. Can you talk, you come from a background of writing poetry. A screenplay is not a poem. In a lot of ways.
But this one is.
No.
This one is.
I'm going to invite Barry into the conversation. But I would love to talk about it because to me this is poetry on film. And most screenplays don't read as poetry. They are often almost like a blueprint for how to build a building. And so I'm curious, maybe actually for you, Barry, and how you came across Raven's work and came across the script. What about it resonated for you to want to produce the film, join I'm going to say one of the original producer, Maria Altamirano, who's here in the audience, and begin to help push the film forward?
First of all, you know, we can't bet technically in San Francisco, but let's take over-under odds. How long is the screenplay for this film? Over 50 pages? Below 50 pages? Over 50, raise your hand. You guys 50 over? Under 50? Maria, was it over or under the version I read?
Slightly over.
What? Just reading this thing, it did not read like a regular screenplay. Raven always describes the film as portraits, these portraits of moments, and the way she wrote the script, there's no slug lines. I mean, there kind of are slug lines, but not traditional slug lines, and the way you do with action description and dialogue. Raven is just like guiding you through this pictorial, this visual experience of you're reading, but you're seeing the film. And so Raven, I think you had already been accepted into the San Francisco Film Society, sort of like a grant.
Grant and fellowship, yeah.
Exactly, and she had applied, Miriam Bell, who's a mutual friend of ours, who was from the Bay Area, the East Bay. She was working with Indie Memphis, which is a film festival in Memphis, and they had this screenwriter residency, and Miriam asked me to judge it. It was to bring filmmakers outside Memphis to live in Memphis for a period of 3 or I think it was 4 weeks or 2 months, and it was like a grant. I had a number on it, sometimes I get asked to go and do talks like this, not at places as dope as the Roxy, but people pay me to give these talks, and whenever they pay me, I go, well, how can I push that money forward? You know, sometimes I'll have a friend who's gonna go into the desert to write a screenplay. I'll be like, hey, you need some money? Take this money, go write the script. And in this case, I told Barry and Lo, I'll match the grant you guys have for this. And he looked at this thing and said, go write a screenplay.
Most people don't do that, I'm just saying that. Which is amazing.
But it was dope. And so I met Raven, and that Raven had a really beautiful piece. There was another filmmaker who also had a beautiful piece. We chose the two filmmakers. And then it was like during the pandemic, I'm gonna be honest as hell, because we have the Roxy. Raven sent me the script that she had finished in his residency, and I didn't read it. I was just like stuck in my own shit with the Underground Railroad, just did not read it. But Raven is just so dope. You know, I always tell people, if you make dope work, it will rise to the top, because outside the channels that I have funded of my own money, somehow this thing that Raven and Maria had sort of created, it came back to me through one of my best friends, Mark Stariak, his brother's here, this guy Eli, he's my connection to San Francisco. Mark was like, yo, I read this thing by Raven Jackson. Apparently you were in Memphis and you read it. I was like, no, bro. I wasn't in Memphis and I didn't read it. I just threw a little money behind it. And is it cool? He was like, oh, it's one of the best things I've ever read in my life. And so I read it, and then was hoping I would get to sit on the stage with Raven and Maria and talk about this film that she had done. That was how the whole thing happened, man. It was just like a really dope person, just really not compromising and just creating this vision of their voice.
And it feels really special too to be up here with Barry, because even before that residency, Maria and I don't even know if I would ever told you this, but we were in a bar one day saying, do you think, I feel like Barry Jenkins could be a great collaborator. And people have said his name to us when we were pitching it. And so, I mean, this has been a journey of so many full circle moments. But when Barry and Pascal came on, being up here today, and our connections to SFO, it feels really special, and also almost inevitable.
But can we just have Maria stand up? Because she's like right here.
Producers often don't get the credit for being on very early and being on the film for as long, if not sometimes longer, if they're developing work before a director comes on board. And there's something pretty magical about that. So a big congratulations. So you wrote a script that was like poetry. I remember seeing a lookbook a few years ago, and for those who aren't familiar, oftentimes when filmmakers are creating work in the early stages, you don't have footage to show, you don't really have a lot to share other than previous work. You put together what's called a lookbook, which is essentially something that is trying to capture the essence visually, tonally, also telling what the story is. And I remember seeing a lookbook of yours back from maybe 2019 or 2020, feeling like as I was reading pieces of it and looking at some of your photography and some of your visual references, that I understood exactly how it was meant to make me feel. And I don't think that happens very often. I think it's a very elusive thing to do that. And when I saw the film, you made what you set out to make. And that doesn't happen all the time, and it certainly doesn't happen the first time out. You shot on film, actual film, which is a little bit of a novelty these days. You also shoot photography on film. Can you talk a little bit about the visual language that you were trying to create? I think about the texture, this sort of sculpture of bodies and landscape that you choose to show.
Yes, you know, it was a lot of, first I want to shout out the cinematographer, John Frey, who's amazing, he's not here yet. But it was a lot of Jomo and I meeting in California for a week, ahead of shooting, and just really getting down to the roots of the film, like emotionally, what is the film, that's like what is happening in certain moments, and finding language to speak about the film, and that would eventually lead to us coming to, okay, what are the tools that can help us get at that specific thing? And we would talk about slant rhymes, and I mean, some of these things you can't plan for, so you see what's present in front of you, and you're like, well, this is asking to be more present in the film than maybe I initially thought, or, but slant rhymes, like whether it's how someone's holding someone in one scene mirrored in another scene, or a movement, like, and that's something Jomo and I talked about a lot, is how can we allow these slant rhymes to be a propulsive, like, rhythm for the film too. And so thinking visually in that way was big, but also knowing that the landscape is, a character in this film, and having deep reverence for that, and giving space is important for the way I like to work, like giving space for the surprises, things you can't script, the things that you just have to be present for. Both Jomo and I were really good at, I feel like, giving that space for what is actually happening in front of us, and like capturing that when inspired in that way. So yeah.
Well, I heard an interview with one of your actors who talked about what a safe environment you gave them to work in on the film, and so much about film or film acting is about being able to be vulnerable in front of the camera. I did hear something about alligators, so I do want to hear about that.
Those Mississippi waters.
Can you talk a little bit, and I'm also then curious from your point of view, Barry, when you are wearing a producer hat, sort of how you are trying to help support and give the director what they need, but can you speak a little bit to, I guess, the environment that you created on set, or what you were interested in creating in order to capture these, I don't know, they're unguarded moments, or maybe undirected moments, unplanned moments?
Yeah, I know what I'm looking for. I'm very clear on that going in, but I'm open on the way to get there. I'm not rigid, or there's some things where maybe I don't be rigid on, and I'm just not. But I like to try to be loose. And I also don't like a lot of noise on set, meaning when I'm shooting, the people who are in the space where we need to be shooting, what's the minimum number we need? I not only for the actors who are often we're asking people to a certain space to feel moved, to feel inspired and things like that. I want to protect their energy in that way, but also for me. I don't want to hear walkie if I don't hear walkie or chatter about what's for lunch. You know what I mean? So I really try to be intentional about protecting that space. And then I feel like there might have been a second.
I was alligators.
Yeah, and then we're in Mississippi, and I mean my mom's side of the family is from Mississippi, but I did not know how dangerous the waters were out there.
You were in a lot of water too. There was a ton of good water scenes.
Yeah, well, there was in the script, there was Order Mac, there was a world where she would have gotten in the water, but I adjusted that script real quick. Yeah, I mean.
Were there any close calls?
Not close calls, but we did see snakes. But we had Dale, who actually is random, Dale Bell, who was our animal wrangler. He knows my mom from high school. So I like little things like that. It's just beautiful, but no real close calls. But speaking to the safety of it all, we made sure that no one got to more.
Yeah, that feels like a smart move. Barry, when you wear a producer hat, you've got producing partners in Mark and Adela. How is that? What do you feel your job is at that point? And is it difficult to not put your director's hat on, or can you talk a little bit about what that role is for you? I guess at that point.
Oh, but it's a relief to not put the director's hat on. Let her deal with this shit. I don't want none of that energy. When we made Moonlight, Plan B never came to set. I never met Brad Pitt in the making of Moonlight, which was great. He used his Brad Pitt is Batman, you know, or Batman doesn't have a cape. No, he does have a cape, actually, in some of the films. His cape just like smothers the film and keeps all the bullshit from stepping on it, you know? And I think for me, Mark Sariak, we mentioned Adele Romansky, I never went to Mississippi, you know, Mark and Adele went to Mississippi, and Catalina, who has an associate producer credit on the film, and Maria was there every step, you know, of the way. My thing is just to read as the drafts come in, and then in post to watch. Because otherwise, I think, I never want a director to feel like my take on their film has to become the take on the film. The reason why we want to empower these, you know, younger than me, these young people to go do what they do is because I can't do what the fuck they do. I know nothing about being a young black woman, you know, in Mississippi, you know, or Memphis, Tennessee. So what do I have to say about what it's like to be a young black woman in Memphis, Tennessee, or Jackson, Mississippi? And you know, there's another young person in the back of the room whose film we're hoping to make next, who also is just this really vivid young person who has a really wonderful way with images and stories. And what can I ever tell you about the story? I can't tell you shit about how to make it. You know, I can respond to the things that you show me. I can also tell you that I trained on film, but I shoot on digital. Shooting on film is not the be-all, end-all. Although I know we just made the greatest shout-out ever for shooting on 35mm. But when we made After Sun with Charlotte Wells, I never went to Turkey. I was too busy making The Lion King. You know, and with this film, I didn't go to Mississippi. However, when Raven was in post on this film, and she wanted to watch it, you know, I was able to say, hey, come down. Come watch it here. Because when you make The Lion King, they build a whole building for you because you have to check all the visual effects on a big screen. And so as an independent filmmaker who shot it in Jackson, Mississippi, if she wants to watch her movie on a big ass screen, bigger than this one, she can come sit in our building and watch it uninterrupted, see how it sounds, how it feels, and then go back and pivot and figure out, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And so my role is using whatever access or power is a very bad word I was talking to my friend about earlier, but whatever that stuff means, it's about creating a very safe space for Raven Jackson to have the same tools, you know, as Chris Nolan, you know, as Steven Spielberg, to make films about young and middle-aged and elderly black women in Jackson, Mississippi, and Memphis, Tennessee. And so that's my role, you know, and I can never tell you how to make your film, but I can feed that, I can tell you.
That brings me also to the edit, because I only recently learned that you worked with Lee Chedemedical, who is a longtime collaborator with a feature film where set to call. So for those who are familiar with his filmmaking, there is a kinship.
Now that's, as a producer, that's a very tricky thing. This is your first feature, correct? Yeah. When a feature filmmaker comes to you and goes, the editor of this film is never going to be in the same room with me, but we are going to cut this film. You have to inhale, exhale, and understand what that means, But you also have to understand this person has made the kind of cinema that I see in this lookbook. And I want to say about the lookbook, typically a filmmaker makes a lookbook, young filmmaker, old filmmaker, no matter what, it's filled with other people's images. Raven's lookbook had nothing but her images. Images she had taken of people she knew, the places she had been, and that made all the difference. That's why when you saw that thing, it had a different charge than other people's lookbooks.
It wasn't her trying to put on someone else's clothes. It didn't feel very much from you.
Exactly.
I can't believe I'm already being told that we are moving to some audience questions. And if you don't have any, I do. Are there any audience questions? I saw a hand shoot up right there.
Hi, wonderful film. Thank you both. All of this is amazing. At what point did you become aware of the sonic story that was happening? It seems like there, even in the entry and exit to the film, there's a sound narrative that's happening. But even in and out of the scenes, there's the voice of nature that's happening with the characters. At what point did you become aware of the presence sonically of nature and how it impacted the film?
just gonna repeat this for the audience, so it's a question about the soundscape, the sonic approach to the film.
Yes, thank you for the question. I love how you say voice of nature. I knew from day one, I knew with the film that it's not dialogue dependent. I wasn't interested in having a lot of score. And so I knew sound design was going to be the score of the film in a lot of ways, and I used to record sound, so I already knew I was going to be intentional, but knowing just that what's at play with this specific film, it's asking for a high level of sound design, you know? And so it's even in the script, like I knew from writing that sound details and hopefully I wanted to use the sound to hopefully allow the audience getting deeper into the interiority of these characters, but also to further speak to how these characters, their relationship to nature, you know, to the rain, to the thunder, how is that thunder sounding in this scene versus the next scene? What are those plant rhymes in the sound, you know? And how is that adding another layer to the story being told? What is the sound of the rain? All of that were questions.
Because you mentioned what restraint you had, I think, on the score and on any music cues, the two music cues that I recall come at incredibly pivotal moments in the film and are, I think, unabashedly cinematic, at least for me. They really made my heart swell quite a bit. And so, can I steal a little bit from her question about that in terms of when you did make the choice to have score? And the times that I'm remembering, but I can be absolutely wrong about this, is after the funeral when the girls are in the back of the truck. And then it sort of echoed again at the very end of the film when Mother Went Mac is with her daughter in the backyard looking at the rain.
Yes, and I knew for the end score I wanted it to be like a release, you know. So I wanted it to be bigger, and with the back of the truck to be a more quiet, subdued score, and it was a process of finding it, listening and talking about it. But I knew that end score, both scores are important to me, but that end score was just like, really finding it was really exciting and a journey, a process, but I knew in a film that's so quiet, I wanted it to feel like release, for it to be louder.
It was permission to allow yourself to go there, for me emotionally, which is really, really powerful. Last question. Oh, that's a lot of pressure. I know people throw a lot of pressure. Jordan, I think you're pointing to someone.
Someone waving their hand right there enthusiastically.
Go ahead, I'm so sorry that I cannot.
I was making really intense faces as well. Hi, I wanted to start by thanking you both so much. It's truly such an honor to be speaking to you. I wanted to say that it's obvious to me that Black people are so beautiful, but I watch your movies and your investment in lighting Black people just really makes it so wonderful in Moonlight and It Feels We Could Talk and All Dirt Road, so I wanted to start by thanking you. My question is, as I was frantically taking notes, I was writing things about the close-ups and the diegetic sound and the narrative gaps and the punctuation of the storms, and we talked about this earlier, but it really does feel deeply poetic, so I wanted to hear more about how your poetry has inspired your filmmaking, or perhaps vice versa.
I think in case people couldn't hear it, it is a question about how poetry has inspired the filmmaking.
Yeah, you know, thank you for that question and those words. It's interesting because it informs it, but it feels like it informs in a way that it's because I am who I am, and you know, I mean, my obsessions are my obsessions in whatever medium I'm working in, but my poetry is very close to nature, my poetry is very sensorial, and my photographs are looking to evoke things as well as is my poetry, you know what I mean? So I think in those ways, it all speaks to each other, because in all of them, I feel I'm trying to get at something, at least where I am at this point in my life. I find that what rhymes across the mediums I'm interested in is I'm trying to get at something in often without saying it explicitly with words. I'm very interested in the body in all of these mediums, the different parts of the body, and what you don't see, and how we express things, through our body, rather than words. That's something that I keep returning to often. So yeah.
I want to take one last question because we talked about this a little bit earlier, and I'd love to give you just a teeny bit of space to talk about time and how you are perceiving and wanting to portray time in the film.
Yeah, it's interesting. I really see my language when it's film evolved. I used to say, it's a texture of memories. In my SF film grant app, I use that language. It's a texture of memories. But as I progressed in the process, I really came to a point where I was looking at all of these moments as now, that there's no past, there's no future, and I didn't want to treat it visually like that either. And I wanted it to have a fluid quality, which is why I'm not interested in giving specific markers on what year it is. Like, of course, I know, the collaborators know, but I'm not going to give you some marker that's going to tell you, oh, it's this year. Which we talked about, even knowing that I feel like all of these moments are present, if I have to say there was one that is the anchor, if there was an anchor where there is a past or there is a future, or where there is a past rather, it's the one over